Unfortunately, sometimes you feel like you're on the outside of a fandom looking in. That feeling that despite the fact that a lot of people enjoy something, you just can't find your own joy in there, which is really frustrating. But at the same time, I really do like those moments because it reminds me that I'm not positive for the sake of being positive. Despite the fact that I will always hold true to this idea that when you don't enjoy things, that doesn't mean it's terrible and that you should destroy it, but rather just examine it and see what's in there that people can enjoy and just inform people. But with that said, this is my review of Komi Can't Communicate, a 12-episode series that aired in the fall 2021 anime season. It was on Netflix, so unfortunately it took forever for me to actually be able to watch the entire series, but it's all out now and people can check it out. But this is my thoughts on it, so let's jump right into it. Komi Can't Communicate follows a guy named Tadano, and Tadano is going to this new school. And they quickly establish that the school is interesting because it seems like there's this long interview process to, I guess, get the most unique of the most unique people within it. And this becomes very apparent as you start to meet the cast of this particular school. Interestingly enough, Tadano is very normal. He's the most normal person you could possibly get. But he's very observant, and this observativeness of Tadano ends up helping somebody in his class, Komi. As we quickly find out through Tadano that Komi seems to have an issue. Despite the fact that everybody loves Komi, she's very beautiful, she has this aura about her, but she's very, very, I wouldn't say quiet, she just lacks any communication whatsoever. He quickly realizes this one day when he falls asleep in class and ends up missing their PE class. Komi stays behind to inform him, but again, isn't able to communicate that to him. So as she's leaving, he quickly realizes, hey, you have a problem with communication, don't you? And the two of them end up communicating to each other using a chalkboard. And what you quickly find out is Komi starts to write a whole lot of stuff. And so you get this real strong sense that despite the fact that Komi has an issue communicating, she wants to talk. She has a very strong desire to communicate to people everything she's thinking. And this is obvious because she's not just talking about the current. She's talking about everything she's wanted to talk about the entire day. Every situation she's had that she wanted to communicate to people. And sadly, Netflix decided not to translate most of that, but you can get the translations out there. But there's a lot of information on this chalkboard that is really instilling to the viewer and the reader, if you're reading the manga, that she's always wanted to communicate to people. So she has these insecurities in herself that is preventing her from communicating to people. But there's one other thing that's highlighted in this communication, and that there's a desire for her to make 100 friends. Yes, the old I want to make 100 friends trope that's in so many anime, like Hitori Bochi, and there's another one this season too, in the winter 2022 season. So anyways, he wants to help her with that. So he says, okay, I'll be your first friend, embarrassingly enough, and I'll help you get those 100 friends. And so thus begins this journey that two of them have together, where Tadano is able to kind of communicate for Komi, and he helps her establish friendships with many other people. Some working out well, some not so much working out, but it all comes around this idea that Komi can't really communicate to people. She gives a bad impression to certain people, but at the same time they're trying to develop those 100 friends for her. And all the while, sometimes her being able to get some sort of communication out, not just writing it down, but actually speaking it, which always turns out to be a really kind of cherished moment. So you end up meeting a lot of other characters, including Nahimi, who is the childhood friend character. You have Ren, who's like super obsessive yandere mode. You have Himiko, who's kind of like likes to be treated like a dog. There's just a very, very colorful cast here. They all have these very pronounced quirks about them. Like I said before, it seems to be the joke around the school itself is that everybody is unique in some super crazy way, over-the-top way. You also meet Komi's family, who's obviously all weird themselves. So yeah, with that said, my thoughts on Komi Can't Communicate. As I kind of alluded to at the very beginning, I struggled a lot with this show. And that's not to say that I am going to be the majority spoken word here, because obviously based on a lot of things I'm reading, a lot of perspective from a lot of people I trust, I'm alone here. So hopefully a lot of people in the comments are like, that's okay, I'm with you, or something like that. I'm extremely alone here. This is kind of right there with a lot of the other things that I have an issue with, like most of Science Sada's work, Trigger's work. I'm on the outside looking in. So take that for the grain of salt. There's going to be a lot of people that will tell you this show was fantastic, and so all I can really tell you is my perspective. I was extremely bored watching this show, and that's extremely unfortunate because I wanted to like this. I heard a lot of buzz about it before it even came out. Not to say that I set my expectation high. Don't get me wrong. When I went into watching this show, I kind of silenced a lot of that out of my mind. I wasn't watching for, okay, what's the great thing about this? Oh, what's the great thing about this? No, I came in going, okay, what is this show? And I actually loved it. When I first started watching this show, I was in love. I mean, you guys can go back and you can check out my first impressions of the show. I really did love it. And a lot of that was centered around Komi. I love Komi. She's adorable. Now, granted, I don't like her normal character design. I get a kick out of her chibi, not chibi, but her kind of more cartoonish look with the round eyes and she's shocked about something or the cat ears fly up. I love that version of it. I don't necessarily like the character designs in general. I really don't like the triangle hair look. I don't like the overly thin eyes that completely don't match any of the other characters. Her character design itself, I'm not a fan of, but I still think she's adorable and I love her demeanor. I love what she's struggling with. Obviously, there is a, internal instincts in a lot of people that this is a character who is kind of struggling with something and she's timid and that's attractive. But that's kind of where it lets off. I mean, like I said before, my first impressions of this series was I love it. This was a great introduction. The chalkboard scene was phenomenal. I thought it was beautifully portrayed by the actual studio, OLM. They did a great job. It was like very hyper animated and a lot of the perspective shots were fantastic. But it's beyond that I struggle with. Once that setup was done, that's all they ever did ever again. Now there's some character moments between Tadano and Komi. There's a little bit of a sense of a relationship building between the two of them, which I think is cute. It's a puppy love aspect. But unfortunately, everything outside of that was introduced trope character, and then that's their shtick every time. So they introduced a character like, let's say, Himiko. And Himiko has this goofiness about her that she wants to be treated like a dog. And so what happens? They go to a new location, they introduce her again. What does she do? The dog thing. And then you go to another location, and then they introduce her again, and what she do? The dog thing. Rin, they introduce her. She's super yandere. I don't know why she wasn't arrested after that whole scene. I would have called the police, but we'll still go with it. After that scene, it's just introduce a new scene. She comes in, and she does the overly obsessive trope. Gosh, I think the worst character of the show, I don't even think she's in my list because of that. There's this one character who just wants to compete with Komi with everything. And so what's her shtick every time she shows up? She wants to outdo Komi. She wants to win against Komi. And that's where I have my issue. I don't think that inherently any of these characters are bad. It's just that whenever they're introduced in the scene, it's just, it just turns into that. They go to a new location and then they insert, this batch of them and they all do their trope in that scene. And that's where I struggle. That's where I was getting really, really bored of the show. It's like the jokes weren't hitting me. And keep in mind, hey, I get to insert it here. Comedy is subjective, and this just didn't work for me. The only character that I really did get a kick out of the entire time was the childhood friend, Osana. Osana was generally, I don't think I've ever seen a character like that in any other show. Now, there are childhood friends in shows, but the shtick with this character is that they're the childhood friend of everybody. So it's really funny when you do have one of those scene changes. Okay, now they're at a festival, and what happens? There's this huge, massive crowd behind Osana, and they're all childhood friends. I mean, that's the whole shtick. I did find that funny because that was something I've never really seen before. But everything else I've technically seen. I've seen the puppy character. I've seen the yandere character. I've seen the overly obsessive, competitive character. It was a struggle for me. And even the family was a struggle for me because, okay, we come to the house and then immediately we see that the mother's overly expressive and the father is not. And I'm like, okay, so this is the joke. And then sure enough, every other person of the family is either overly loud or very quiet, and it's like I got the joke. I got it. You don't worry. I've got the joke. No, you don't have to show another character. We've established it. So I don't know. Like I said, I think that's where my struggle really lies in. Is that the writer just think I don't know. I guess they think the jokes are just really great, so they keep reintroducing it without really doing anything with it. And again, I think that a lot of people that are going to be on the more positive side of this, I don't want to, I guess, pigeonhole people, but I know that a lot of people, when they talk about this series, their words of praise is around Komi. And I understand that. Komi is a great character. She is waifu character for a lot of people. And I like her too. I think she's a great character. And she has a lot of cuteness about that timidness that you want to root for. Every time she's really struggling, you want to root for them. But I don't know that I ever hear people talk about liking the cast themselves. And that's where I'm kind of question marking it. But maybe a lot of those character archetypes that are kind of played off again and again might be for a lot of people a lot of enjoyment. And again, going to that comedy subjective thing, that might be something that's really funny for a lot of people, and I'm just missing the jokes. But I don't know, like again, in the end, I don't want to say that this is a bad show and that people shouldn't watch it. That's not what I do here. And if people think that's disingenuous, then that's their prerogative. My whole point here is to say, this is what I've seen kind of be established. It didn't work for me, but try it out. It might work for you. That's my whole perspective here. Like I said before, I am comfortable and have experienced in the past many times where I'm on the outside looking in, that things just don't work for me. Izuken didn't work for me. Pop Team Epic didn't work for me. Kill la Kill didn't work for me. I'm not this infallible person that will love everything that you love, but I do want to kind of give a perspective of my own, and that's my perspective. I, unfortunately, watching this show, was extremely bored throughout the entire thing, but I wanted to find what was that gem that people love so much, and I think I found it. It's just, it didn't work for me in the end, which is unfortunate because I wanted to enjoy it. But even still, for a lot of people that did enjoy this series, I am really happy for people that this did get a second season announcement pretty much immediately. The last episode ended with them announcing a sequel, and I think that people are going to love that as well, and I definitely look forward to that. I was also curious if this series did get to the point where I heard that a lot of people say that it has a setup and then it shifts at some point. I don't know that that was already done. Maybe I missed it. Or if this will have maybe in the second season it gets that shift. Because I think that was the other thing that I was curious about, and the other reason why I stuck with it is that I was told that this does have a shift at some point. It may have already happened because it did feel tonally like it shifted. Once it introduced all the characters, it really got focused on establishing the relationship between Komi and Tadano. And maybe that's what people are talking about. But we'll see. That's my thoughts on Komi Can't Communicate. Definitely check it out if any of that sounds interesting to you. I hope you guys enjoyed my review. If you did, leave a like down below. I'm sure I'll get plenty of dislikes. But you won't be able to see it now because thank you, YouTube, for protecting... Wait, it doesn't protect me because I still see it. I don't know what that does, but... Let me know in the comments what you thought, or if you're going to check it out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon, or throw a tips link in the description below. We definitely appreciate everybody that does, and y'all take care.